Get out of this house right now. My brother's voice sliced through the air like a knife, echoing off the walls of our old family home in the quiet suburbs of Seattle. I'm Emily Carter, 32. And I've built my life from the ground up here in the Emerald City, running a small artisanal coffee shop that specializes in locally roasted blends and cozy community vibes. But that afternoon, standing in the living room where I'd grown up dodging shadows, his words landed like a punch to the gut. My parents, perched on the worn leather couch, just traded a knowing smirk, their silence screaming louder than his command. No pushback. No shock, just that smug, loaded glance. Like they'd scripted the scene long ago. I'd driven over for what I thought would be a routine visit, maybe laced with the usual tension from our fractured history. My brother, Alex, had always been the golden boy, turning every family moment into his personal spotlight. But this wasn't just about kicking me out. It was a raw power grab, a declaration of war. And my parents' smirks? They reeked of collusion. The room felt heavier, years of being the afterthought crashing over me like a wave. But deep inside, a spark ignited a rage I'd buried for too long. I wasn't that invisible girl anymore. I'd forged my own path, and I damn well wasn't letting them erase me from this one. What they didn't know was the bombshell I'd unearthed, a secret hidden for 3 years that would turn their little game inside out. Alex's demand was about to unleash a storm none of us saw coming, and I was done playing nice. But how had it spiraled to this? How does a childhood home become a battlefield of betrayal? Growing up in the rainy outskirts of Seattle, I always knew my role, second fiddle to Alex. He was the star quarterback, the kid who could sling a pass and make our parents' eyes light up like the Space Needle at night. I was just Emily, the quiet one in the background, scraping for scraps of attention. By age 12, it was crystal clear. Alex was their son, the one they pinned all their dreams on. I didn't crave the spotlight, I just wanted to be seen. My folks, David and Linda, dumped every spare dollar into Alex's glory. They shelled out for that elite private academy with the killer football program, hired personal trainers, and decked him out in gear that shone under those Friday night floodlights. He's got NFL potential, Dad would boast, his chest puffed with pride. Mom would nod along, her gaze glued to Alex's every play on the field. I'd be up in the bleachers, sketching coffee bean logos in my battered notebook, fading into the noise. When I'd show them my doodles, ideas for a shop that blended art and brews, they'd mutter a distracted, "That's cute," before diving back into scouting reports. Money always flowed his way. His tuition came first, even if it meant skimping on basics. By 15, I was slinging lattes at a dingy cafe after school to stash cash for community college. Builds character, Mom said, waving off my exhaustion. Meanwhile, Alex got fresh jerseys every season. No sweat. The grind didn't break me, it fueled me. Those long shifts gave me space to dream about roasting my own beans, creating a spot where people could linger and connect. But the constant dismissal? It festered like a bruise that never faded. Coffee became my sanctuary. At 14, I started experimenting with blends in our kitchen, turning cheap grounds into something special for friends. By 18, I threw together a pop-up tasting event at school, rallying classmates to sample my roasts in the gym-turned-cafe. The cheers were electric as they sipped my bold, earthy brews. My pulse raced with that rare thrill of validation, but my parents? They were at Alex's championship game across the state. Next time, kiddo, Dad said over a staticky call. I hung up, forcing a grin for my buddies. The one who really got me was my grandma, Margaret. She'd brew tea in her sunlit kitchen, showing me how to grind beans just right. You've got a real gift. Emily, she'd say, her voice steady and warm. When I'd share my blend ideas, she'd taste them thoughtfully, nodding at the nuances, pushing me to refine. She gifted me her old roaster, spinning yarns about her days running a tiny tea shop back in the 70s. You're a builder, she told me, eyes twinkling. Don't let anyone grind that out of you. My wins were humble but hard-earned. At 19, I won a local barista contest with a signature blend, scoring a scholarship for business classes. I rushed home, buzzing with excitement, only to find them knee-deep in Alex's college recruitment drama. Good job, Mom said, barely glancing at my trophy before handing Alex the phone. I swallowed the sting. Grandma, though, she framed my certificate on her wall like it was Olympic gold. This is your launch pad, she said, squeezing my shoulder. Those years forged me in fire. My parents' bias was an unbreakable barrier, but it taught me self-reliance. Every shift at the cafe, every tweak to a roast, was a brick in my foundation. Grandma's belief was my lifeline. She saw the fire in me and fanned it. As I stepped into adulthood, her words armored me, vowing I'd never settle for scraps again. After wrapping up community college, I planted roots in bustling downtown Seattle, hell-bent on escaping the shadows. At 24, I'd had enough of being overlooked. Years of sketching cafe layouts and socking away tips had primed me for this. With a modest loan and sheer grit, I snagged a narrow storefront on Pike Street, amid the hipster haunts and tech crowds that define the city's pulse. My vision, a coffee shop called Brew Haven, serving handcrafted roasts that told stories of local farmers and bold flavors. Launching from zero was a nightmare. I learned the ropes solo sourcing beans, mastering espresso pulls, juggling spreadsheets. Nights blurred into dawns, tweaking recipes while binging podcasts on small business hacks. Screw-ups stacked high, a botched batch of over-roasted beans, a flaky supplier, a budget stretched thinner than a latte foam. But each flop hardened my resolve. This wasn't just a shop, it was my declaration of independence. A random networking event flipped the script. I bumped into my pal Sarah Jenkins, a no-nonsense attorney fresh out of law school with a talent for slicing through bureaucracy. She tried one of my sample brews and lit up, peppering me with questions about my sourcing. This is killer, she said, eyeing my business plan. But your lease? It's got holes, let me tighten it. Her tweaks locked in better terms, giving Brew Haven breathing room. We bonded over double espressos and drive, and she became my legal lifeline for the entrepreneurial maze. All the while, Alex was cruising on our parents' endless bailout train. They poured cash into his tech startup schemes, funding gadgets and apps that fizzled fast, while I survived on black coffee and determination. They tossed me a pity offer once. Over a strained family brunch, we could spot you some startup funds, Dad said, implying I was floundering. I shut it down cold. I'm good, I replied, chin up. Accepting would chain me to their strings, and I'd clawed too far to owe them that power. Brew Haven took root slowly. I stocked shelves with my blends, dark roasts with Seattle's foggy edge, and built the counters myself. Opening day was chaos, a trickle of customers, a few sales, knots in my gut. But buzz grew. Neighbors raved about the homey vibe. A barista from across the street grabbed a bag of beans, then dragged her crew. A teacher hosted her book club there. By year one, I was in the black, a quiet triumph that roared in my chest. The breakthrough hit when a Seattle food blog spotlighted Brew Haven in a piece on indie roasters. Emily Carter is brewing up a storm in local coffee, it gushed. I nearly spilled my mug reading it. Foot traffic surged, techies, artists, even influencers posting aesthetic shots. I expanded hosting tasting workshops, partnering with local bakers. The community wrapped around me like a warm mug, making me feel rooted for the first time. Alex's startups, though, crashing and burning. Whispers from old friends painted a picture, failed pitches, mounting debts. Parents never breathed a word, but their worried frowns said plenty. I could have savored the irony, but I was too deep in my grind. Brewhaven wasn't just a business, it was my proof I didn't need their crumbs to thrive. By 27, I'd etched my name in Seattle's coffee scene. And nothing, not even family, could dilute that. Last spring, a letter from Grandma Margaret's attorney shattered my world, forcing me to question every family tie. It arrived in a stiff envelope, stamped with a Seattle firm's seal, addressed in sharp print. Contact us regarding the estate of Margaret Ellis, it stated plainly. My throat tightened, not from fresh grief, which I'd grappled with since her passing 3 years back, but from an instinct that this was a game-changer. I headed to their office in the heart of the city, nerves buzzing. Grandma had been my anchor, but she'd never whispered about bequests. The attorney, a poised woman with a steady gaze, ushered me into a polished boardroom. Your grandmother left a detailed will, she said, handing over the papers. She's bequeathed her house solely to you. I went still. That warm, memory-soaked home in Seattle's suburbs, hers. Now mine. She'd noted in her wishes that she trusted me to cherish its spirit, to infuse it with the creativity she saw in me. Hearing her words read aloud cracked something open inside. She'd truly seen me, in ways my parents never bothered. Then the hammer dropped. The attorney leaned in, voice measured. Your brother Alex contested it quietly 3 years ago. Post-funeral, my insides twisted like bad grounds. He'd slink behind my back, arguing for a family split. He'd failed no legal footing, but he'd kept it buried from me. He insisted on discretion, she added carefully. I clenched the armrest, fury simmering. Why the secrecy? What angle was he working? I needed intel. Fast. Sarah answered on the second ring. You sound wrecked, what's up? I spilled it all, the letter. The inheritance. Alex's shadow play. She didn't flinch. Forward the docs, I'll dissect this. Days later, she called back, tone laced with shock. Alex fed your parents a lie, she said. Claimed no will existed. That the house defaulted to the family pool. I sank onto my stool at Brewhaven, staring at the phone. Betrayal boiling over. He'd manipulated them into believing it was communal turf, all while icing me out. Sarah's dive confirmed the will's solidity, Grandma's signature. Notarized. Airtight. But Alex's deceit? That was a knife in the back I hadn't anticipated. It clicked then, his entitlement. The golden child syndrome. Viewing the house as his due. This wasn't mere real estate, it was about dominance. Sidelining me yet again. Grandma's voice echoed in my head, stand tall. Emily, you're tougher than they know. Her trust ignited a fire. I wasn't battling for bricks, I was defending her vision of me. The independence I'd earned. I thanked Sarah. Steel settling in. Alex's web of lies had cracked our family foundation. And I couldn't ignore it. Why the elaborate cover-up? What did he really crave from that house? As I locked up the shop that night, Seattle's rain streaking the windows, one truth crystallized, I wouldn't fold. Grandma had armed me with more than a deed, she'd given me spine. And I was geared up to use it. A week after that revelation, I swung by the family home, bracing for small talk that exploded into chaos. I'd stepped into the familiar living room, sketches of new coffee blends tucked in my bag, hoping for a low-key chat with Mom and Dad. Instead, Alex loomed there, arms folded, eyes storming. Pack your stuff and leave, this house is going on the market, he barked, ice in his tone. I reeled. Selling it. The place wasn't his to hawk. And he damn well knew it. My parents, David and Linda, lounged on the couch, smirking like insiders to a private joke. No defense for me, just that complicit vibe. Dredging up old wounds of being the outsider. The atmosphere thickened. Betrayals sting sharper than ever. But I wasn't retreating. I grilled him. Why now? What's the rush? His facade cracked. He confessed his startups had imploded, botched investments. Creditors circling. He was buried in red ink, eyeing the house as his escape hatch. It's for all of us, he insisted. But his shifty gaze sold him out. This was self-preservation. Pure and ugly. Dad dipped his head in quiet approval. Mom's lips twitching upward. Their hush confirmed it. They'd always picked him. Even as he torpedoed us all. I straightened. Pulse thundering. I'd clawed my way to stability. Why should I yield? I drew a breath and fired back. You can't touch it, I said. Voice level. Grandma willed this house to me alone. Silence swallowed the room. Alex's face contorted, shock morphing to rage. Bullshit, he snarled. Advancing. Parents' smirks dissolved into bewilderment. I will, Mom snapped. Edge in her words. I affirmed, whipping out the copy I'd safeguarded since the attorney's meet. Sole heir. 3 years back, I declared, brandishing it. This is mine. Legally. Pandemonium broke loose. Alex roared accusations. Forged. You're fabricating this. His desperation quaked. But I held steady. Notarized. Alex, I verified with counsel. And I know about your failed contest. His eyes bulged. He hadn't banked on my intel. Dad surged up. Flushed. This is nonsense. The house is family property. Mom piled on. Dripping skepticism. Margaret wouldn't cut us out. I met their stares. Fury cresting. They weren't just questioning the will. They were dismissing me. As ever. She did, I countered firmly. She entrusted me to safeguard it. Not pawn it for screw-ups. The clash snowballed. Alex stormed around. Hurling barbs, you're just bitter. Always envious. I let out a harsh laugh. Envious? I bootstrapped my life without your handouts. You're the one desperate for a bailout. Parents dove in. Voices clashing. You're ripping us apart, Mom accused. Glaring. Prioritize Alex's path. I shook my head. Done with the favoritism. What about my path? I retorted. I'm not forfeiting my due because you've babied him forever. I stormed out amid the din. Alex's vows to re-challenge ringing. Parents' refusal to side with me sealed the rift, a betrayal that cut bone deep. But driving away, will in hand, a fierce resolve burned. Grandma's faith outweighed their scorn. This war had just ignited, and I was armored for the fray. 3 weeks on, I plunged into the family's financial underbelly, uncovering rot deeper than I'd feared. Post-blowout. A nagging doubt gnawed. Alex's sell-off push smelled of more than startup flops. I rang Sarah. Voice taut, can you probe the house's records? She committed to a thorough scrub. And I steeled for the fallout. Sarah delivered swift. We huddled at her firm overlooking Puget Sound. Papers fanned out. Your parents pulled a second mortgage, she revealed. Tapping the contract. My gut plummeted. David and Linda had leveraged the house to prop Alex's ventures, hundreds of thousands siphoned into his doomed apps. And now? Payments lagged. Foreclosure loomed like a storm cloud. Alex hasn't touched the debt, Sarah added gravely. I gaped at the figures. Betrayal surging. My inheritance, Grandma's gift, teetered on seizure due to their recklessness. I confronted them the next day at home. Docs in fist. Why hide the mortgage? I demanded. Dad blanched. Mom averted eyes. We backed Alex's dreams, Dad admitted defensively. His business needed it. Unbelievable. They'd gambled my legacy without a whisper. And now it's at risk, I pressed. Anger flaring. Did you consider the fallout? The real kicker landed. Mom leaned in. Voice honeyed with manipulation. Step up, cover the mortgage. For the family. I barked a disbelieving laugh. They wanted me to rescue Alex's wreckage. Preserve a house they'd jeopardized. Under family guise. Dad echoed, that's what kin does. I shook my head. Stunned. You mortgaged my house, I stated flatly. The will makes it mine. I'm not footing his bills. Their expressions iced over. Selfish, Mom hissed. Eyes slits. Alex's future hangs in the balance. I stood firm. Papers crumpling in my grip. Mine does too, I fired back. This was my trust. Not his safety net. You enabled his gambles, not me. The quiet aftermath weighed like lead. Their judgment thick. But I'd outgrown their approval chase. I'd thriving sans their aid, no way I'd bleed for their blunders. Back at Brewhaven. I dialed Sarah, shield the house. She mapped the plan, claim enforcement. Bank alerts. Lawsuit prep. Mortgage muddies waters, she cautioned. But your ownership holds. The following days blurred, compiling files. Consulting title experts. Penning bank missives. Each move felt like trench warfare. But retreat wasn't an option. The house symbolized more than walls, Grandma's endorsement of my strength. As I toiled, their choices gravity sank in, Alex's folly, parents' enablement, risking all. But I wasn't the gambler here. I was the defender. With Sarah flanking me, I braced for the mess ahead. In Seattle's relentless drizzle, Sarah and I mapped my next moves for the house I'd claimed. Aware the storm raged on. The mortgage fiasco, parents' bailout for Alex, pinned me with a brutal choice: rescue it and house them. Or enforce my rights and sever ties forever. I yearned to honor Grandma's intent, but offer redemption too. So I extended an olive branch. I'd retain ownership. Let them stay if they confessed decades of favoring Alex and cut off his financial lifeline. Fair. I figured a shot at healing amid the wreckage. I pitched it at the house a week later. Tone even but unyielding. I'll handle the mortgage. Keep the deed, but own the bias you've shown me all my life. And the cash flow to Alex ends. Dad's jaw set. Eyes hardening. You're blackmailing us with the roof over our heads. Mom's retort cut deeper, self-centered as ever. Emily, Alex needs support. No remorse. No reflection. Just defense of the prodigal son. My chest ached. But predictability dulled the blow. Their stance solidified mine. To Sarah, I declared, no more concessions, let's claim it outright. She affirmed, dialing a battle-tested litigator. This drags, she noted. But you're right. Relief mingled with sorrow, finally. I was drawing lines, valuing myself over their pulls. The attorney filed suit to validate my title and halt foreclosure. Months ground on, hearings, sworn statements, barbed correspondences. Parents countered. Dubbing it family equity, Alex lawyered up, decrying the will's legitimacy. Evidence shone through. Grandma's ironclad directive. Their mortgage ploy? Irrelevant to ownership. Victory came. Court affirmed me sole proprietor. Evicting kin in 30 days. Triumph tasted bitter. Packing scenes haunted Dad's averted gaze. Heavy with grudge, Mom's murmurs of disloyalty. I didn't waver. They downsized to a cramped condo in the city. A stark drop from lifelong comfort. Alex, cut off, grabbed a coding gig at a startup, humbling for the once ambitious mogul. No schadenfreude from me, karma sufficed. House secured. I reimagined it to echo Grandma's spirit, Margaret's brew. A satellite extension of my shop. Blending coffee demos with community hubs. The living room. Once argument central. now brimmed with bean stations and art walls, each setup whispering resilience. I flung doors wide to see delights, roast workshops, farmer meetups, open mics for locals. Debut drew throngs, patrons, neighbors, story sharers. This spot breathes life, a budding roaster said, sampling my blend. I grinned, sensing Grandma's approval. Reflecting, the house war transcended deeds, it was self-assertion. Family branded me greedy. But boundaries aren't avarice, they're self-preservation. I'd lingered in shadows, yet built unyielding. Grandma's trust propelled me, repurposing her home honored that. The cost? Fractured bonds. But the gain, my unshakable worth, outweighed it all.